Hi, welcome to my very first crochet YouTube tutorial. My name is Savannah Stitches and I'm a crochet designer, and this is the first time I have ever put out a design for free, which is pretty wild. And it is for this beautiful winter themed patchwork blanket, which has a lot of snowflakes and stars in it and a cute little simple border that will keep you very cozy in this trying season. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the pattern and about the design before we get started into the actual instructions. This project is not for someone who's looking to make something super fast. You can get into the groove of it pretty easily since it is kind of the same squares. Once you learn how to do those squares and you've like memorized the instructions in your head, those you can turn out pretty fast. The yarn that I used for this project, you will need 1,330 yards of color 1, which is this white. So it'll be the center of every square you make, it'll be the lines between the squares, and it'll be the color of your border. So you'll need 1,330 yards of that. For the outside of all of the squares, you will need 990 yards. So I use this nice dark blue. If you want to use the exact yarn that I use so you get very similar results to mine, I have a kit with Lion Brand that is now available. Super exciting. With that kit, you get the exact yarn that I used. I used Lion Brand's Pound of Love, which I enjoy using quite a lot. It's a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of yardage in one skein. So the link for that is available at the description. You will also get a free written pattern alongside that. So if you want this YouTube tutorial and the written pattern available to you, you can get that for free. I also have the written pattern available on my Etsy for a bit of a price alongside my website, Ravelry, Ribbler, things like that. But I also have it for free written with ads on my website. So I'll link to all of that in the description. But if you want the yarn, you can get that in the kit, or you can use any normal size 4 worsted weight yarn that you prefer. There's a lot of good substitutes. I feel a lot of people don't know about the website yarnsub.com. So if you're looking for a substitute, if Pound of Love isn't your thing, it's definitely my thing, but not everyone likes the same yarn. You can go to yarnsub.com. So the only notions that you'll need for this pattern is a 5mm hook and a nice pair of scissors. If your gauge isn't exactly the same as mine, you might need to size up or size down. I am not going to include a gauge swatch for this pattern simply because I want you to make the squares first and measure them. That will basically be your gauge, because there's not really any normal stitches going into this besides for the join as you go and the border. So there's no real purpose for a gauge swatch besides for making sure that the size of your squares is the same size as mine, if that makes sense. So make sure you measure each square after you've made them and that it is 5 by 5 inches or 13 by 13 centimeters. If your square is too big, that means you need to size down your hook to make smaller stitches and make a smaller square. And if your square is too small, say 4.5 inches or something like that, you will need to use a bigger hook to make your stitches bigger and make them match the size of mine. It also might be the size of your yarn. It might be too thin or too thick because not all size 4 yarn is the exact same, but just experiment with what you're using and you'll definitely have a great result in the end if you follow all of these instructions. But yeah, that's all I have for now. I think this pattern is pretty beginner friendly. I would not do this as a first project, definitely not, but if you're looking to get a lot of practice with making squares, I think it's a lot of fun to do. You do have to make 64 squares in total, which seems like an intimidating number, I know. I am a lover of patchwork squares. I love to be able to memorize how to make a square because I usually crochet while I'm watching TV or a movie with my mom, and so I like to be able to just zone out and do the square while I'm still able to watch whatever is in front of me. So it's the perfect project for that. And if you want the written pattern to also follow along, that'll be on my blog for free with ads, or you can buy it on my Etsy website, whatever, or you can get a copy for free and also buy all the yarn you need in one go with Lion Brand's kit. So with that, let's get started with my first ever YouTube tutorial. First, we're going to learn how to make the star square. I'm going to use these colors, which are not the ones that I used while making the blanket, just because these ones show up better on camera. So let's begin by making a slip knot in whatever way you know how. I wrap mine twice around my index finger and hold the end sort of in between my thumb and middle finger, and then I slip the back one over the first one, and the first one over my finger, and that creates a nice slip knot for me to go into. After that, let's start by chaining 4, 4, and then slip stitch into your first chain, and then you are going to chain 2. This counts as your first double crochet, this chain 2. And then we are going to place 14 double crochet into the center of our chain 4 and slip stitch. We created a little circle with that, so we're going to go right in here. So I am going to place my first double crochet in there, and then I'm going to place 13 more for a total of 15 double crochet, including my initial chain 2 that I made. Already made 5. Oh, sometimes I mess up. I also crochet over my end as I go when I'm doing this. You don't have to do that if you like to secure your ends in a different way, but it's just my preferred method to keep from having so many ends to weave in later. I know that can often be an issue with patchwork patterns, and that's how I avoid having a lot of extra work to do at the end. So let's just count this here, see how many I've made. I usually count in multiples of 5, so that's 5, and that is 5 at the bottom, and that is only 4. So I'm going to make one more. I'm going to lay my work down. I'm going to snip this little end off, and then I am going to slip stitch into the top of my first chain 2. So into that second chain, I am going to slip stitch. So now we have made 15 double crochet, including our first chain 2, counting as one of those double crochet. We slip stitch into the top. This is round 1 of your star. So for round 2, we are going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we are going to single crochet into the first chain, half double crochet into the next chain, double crochet into the next chain, and then into that last chain, make a triple crochet. Now this is where things get complicated. We are going to skip 2 stitches from the first round and then slip stitch into the third stitch. So this does not include where we made our chain, the stitch that we made our chain off of, which is this double crochet. So we're going to skip that first stitch, skip the second stitch, and slip stitch into the top of this third, technically 4th double crochet of round 1. We're going to slip stitch into there, and then we are going to repeat the process to make this little point. So we're going to chain 5 again, and we are going to single crochet, half double crochet into the next chain, and then triple crochet into that final chain. And then after that, we are going to skip 2 stitches again, not including the one that this point was made out of, so this one doesn't count. We are going to skip 1, 2, and then slip stitch into that third stitch. And now we have made 2 points of our star. So I'll make the third one with you. Chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Single crochet into that first chain, half double crochet, and triple crochet into the last chain. And again, we are just going to skip 2 stitches, not including the one that we made our chain out of. So I'm going to slip stitch into that next one. Then I'll just finish out the star with you guys, going a little bit faster now that we have the hang of it. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, single crochet, half double, double, and triple. I'm going to skip 2 stitches, slip stitch into that one, and now let's make our last point. I'm going to chain 5, just like we've been doing for all the other ones. Make a single crochet, a half double, a double, and finally a triple. And then we are going to slip stitch into the initial slip stitch that we made to complete round 1, because this is the stitch that we made this little chain out of. Then we're going to skip 2, and then we are going to wiggle our hook into that slip stitch. It might be a little tight if you made it that way, but that is totally okay. You can totally work it in there. And now we have completed our star. We've completed rounds 1 and 2. So I am going to just cut a little length and then pull that through, fasten off, and you have already made your little star. Isn't that way easier than you thought it would be? So now let's grab color 2, and now we are going to do what I like to call squaring the star. So to start round 3, we are going to identify one of the double crochets we made in one of these points. You can pick any random one. I'm just going to use this one. Insert your hook, pull your color 2 through, and then tie off your yarn to attach your color 2 yarn to your star. Then I'm going to reinsert my hook into that stitch. I'm going to fold this end over so I can work over it as I go, and I'm going to pull up a loop and chain 2. This counts as our first double crochet. Then this is where things get complicated. We are going to triple crochet into the next stitch, but we are not going to complete that triple crochet. So I'm going to yarn over twice like you would for a normal triple crochet, then pull up a loop. Then I'm going to pull through 2 of the loops, pull through 2 more of the loops, and then I'm not going to do that final pull through. We're going to now start working into the bottom of these chains that we made for the points. So to do this, let me remove my hook from these stitches to show you where we're going to work into. To do this, we are going to insert our hook into the bottom of these chains, not to the bottom of the stitches or anything, but the bottom of these chains. This is what it looks like from the other side, the back of the chains. You're basically, these kind of 2 bumps that make up the bottom of the chains, you're inserting your hook just into those 2 bumps, if that makes sense. So I'm going to reinsert my hook into my stitches, and I'm going to do my normal yarn over twice, insert my hook into the bottom of that chain. So this is what that looks like, working into the bottom of the chain. I'm going to continue to work over that end. I'm going to pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops twice, and again, not finish that triple crochet. And then I'm going to do that 1 more time into this same stitch. So I'm going to pull up a loop, pull through twice. And so now we have 3 unfinished triple crochets on our hook, and we are just going to pull through all 4 of the loops that are on our hook to create a triple crochet 3 together. So if I ever say to triple crochet 3 together, that's what that looks like. Then after that, we are going to just chain 1 and work a double crochet into the bottom of the next sort of chain stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook there. That's what that looks like. That's sort of where I'm inserting it. That is what it looks like from the back now. And then I'm going to crochet over the end as I have been doing and just make a normal double crochet. So we're kind of just working the same stitch into the bottom of what we made over here. So I worked 2 triple crochet into this triple crochet. I'm going to work a double crochet into this one and into the bottom of the chain that I worked this half double crochet into. You guessed it, I'm going to work a half double crochet and then a single crochet into the next one. And then you still have that final chain that you didn't work into. So you're going to just get into that one. This might, again, be a little tight. You can definitely work your hook in there. If you got it in there and it still doesn't seem like enough to work into, you can insert the wider part of your hook and kind of rotate it out to make the chain bigger. And I'm just going to pull through to make a slip stitch into that. Make sure that this is pretty loose. You don't want to make this tight because we will be working into it to the next round. So into the top of my single crochet, I'm going to make another single crochet into the top of my half double, another half double, and then a double crochet into, you guessed it, my double crochet. And then I'm going to do that triple crochet 3 together over these 2 stitches again. You're not working into the slip stitches that you made to bring your points down and secure them to the round 1. So I'm not going to be working into this at all. I'm just going to do my first incomplete triple crochet in this first stitch. Then I'm going to transition to over here working to the bottom of that chain. I'm going to yarn over twice, make an incomplete triple crochet stitch, so now I have 3 loops on my hook, and make my final incomplete triple crochet into that same stitch. Then I'm going to pull through all 4 loops and chain 1 again. So this is basically what we're repeating all the way around. I'm going to double crochet into my next stitch, the bottom of that chain, then I'm going to half double into the bottom, then single crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch into that unused chain. Then I'm going to single crochet into the next one, half double into the next one, double into the next one, and then an incomplete triple crochet into the next one, then 2 incomplete triple crochet into the bottom of that first chain. And I'll continue to work this all the way around with you guys because I know this can be a confusing one and it can be helpful to see it worked out. So I'm going to do that double, and then just finish my next half double, another single, and then a slip stitch into that unused chain. So you can kind of see how we're filling in the edges of the star here. We're going to be making a pentagon that we will later sort of squarify in our next round. So I'm going to single crochet in my next stitch, and half double, then double, then an incomplete triple, and then 2 more incomplete triples into the next stitch, which completes our triple crochet 3 together when we pull through all 4 loops. Then I'm going to chain 1, then complete a double, a half double. If it seems like I'm doing this really easily, it's because I've done this quite a lot. This is the second or third pattern that I've used these star squares for, so I'm pretty used to this stitch pattern, and you will become pretty used to it as well by the end of this pattern. I think it's a lot of fun to do, to watch it go from star to pentagon to square, and finally to use that in the pattern itself. I think it's a really cute design, and I love the way it looks. I love that you can make these little things pretty simply in crochet. And also you can learn this as a motif to use this star to sew on to different projects or stuff if you want to, use as sort of an applique. So these are our final couple stitches. I'm going to slip stitch, as I have been doing, into that unused chain, and then single crochet, then half double crochet, and we have arrived back at our initial chain 2, which counts as our first double crochet. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 2, into the second chain of it, and we have finished round 3. Isn't that pretty exciting? To start round 4, we are going to chain 1, and then into this same chain that we just slip stitch into, or the same stitch, we are going to create a single crochet, then we are going to single crochet into the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochet. Into the next stitch, we are going to half double crochet. Again, if you made your slip stitches into the top of these stars, you'll have a little trouble working in there, but that's totally fine. That's a very normal thing to happen. So we just made our half double crochet. Then next we are going to double crochet into the next stitch and then chain 2. Then we are going to triple crochet into the same stitch. So just make a triple crochet, and this is our first corner. Then into the next 2 stitches, we are going to double crochet. So place 2 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, then 2 half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then 2 single crochet into the next 2 stitches. And then finally, over these next 2 stitches, I'm going to work 1 single crochet 2 together, which basically means I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, then insert my hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull through all 3 loops on my hook. So that is called a single crochet 2 together. So then I'm going to half double crochet into the next stitch, then double crochet into the next stitch. Then I'm going to do what I like to call a half triple crochet. I don't know what it's actually called, but I kind of made it up for this pattern to get the right sort of height of stitch that I wanted. So to complete a half triple crochet, you're going to yarn over twice like you would for any normal triple crochet, insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, then pull through 2, and then you are not going to pull through 2 twice like you would for a normal triple crochet. You're just going to pull through all 3 loops left on your hook. So I like to call that a half triple crochet. And into the next stitch, we are going to work a normal triple crochet, then we are going to chain 2, then we are going to yarn over twice, and into that same stitch, work another triple crochet. So you can see that we've now made 2 corners of our square. We have that first one, and we just made our second one. Into the next stitch, we are going to make another one of those half triple crochets. So again, I'll show you how to make that. You yarn over twice, insert your hook and pull up a loop, then pull through 2 of those loops, and then pull through the final 3. So that's called a half triple crochet, at least according to me. Then I'm going to make a double crochet into the next stitch, then a half double crochet into the next stitch, and then into the next 3 stitches I'm going to complete a single crochet. So 1 single crochet, 2 and 3, then I'm going to half double crochet into the next stitch, then double crochet into the next 2 stitches, so just completing my second one, and then another one of those finicky half triple crochets. And then we are going to make our next corner, so I'm going to make a triple crochet into the next stitch, then chain 2, and triple crochet into the same stitch. So we just made yet another sort of corner of our square, you can see. we're kind of squarifying that pentagon that we made in the last round. Then I'm going to do another half triple crochet after, and then another double crochet into the next stitch, and then a half double crochet into the next stitch. Then into the next 3 stitches, I'm going to single crochet, so 1, 2, 3, then a half double crochet into the next stitch, then 2 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, so 1 and 2, then our final half triple crochet into the next stitch, and then our final corner. So create a triple crochet into the next stitch, then chain 2, and into that same stitch another triple crochet, and then to finish out this round, make a double crochet into the next stitch, and then single crochet into your final 2 stitches. Then to finish off the round, just slip stitch into your initial sort of single crochet. And this is the ending of round 4. I'm going to pull this up a little so you can see what we're kind of working with here. This is the way the square will be oriented correctly, but this is what we've done so far. Isn't that, again, way easier than you thought it would be? Pretty exciting. So we are going to finish off with round 5. So I'm going to reinsert my hook into that loop, then I'm going to chain 2, which counts as my initial double crochet. I'm going to just double crochet in each stitch until I reach that first corner. This is the easiest round by far. You don't have to think about a bunch of stitches and sort of memorize the order they go in or anything. So this is the final stitch I'm double crocheting into. And then into that corner, we are going to work into that chain 2 space. This is what that's called. So I'm going to work 2 double crochet, then I'm going to chain 2, and then I am going to work 2 more double crochet into this chain 2 space. So I'm going to work 2 double crochet. I'm not working into the chains themselves, just the space that chain 2 created in the last round. Then I'm going to, you guessed it, double crochet into every single one of these stitches until I hit the next corner. I'm going to double crochet each stitch until I hit that corner. This creates a really nice final round for the star square. I think it makes it have really nice clean edges. Again, perfect for this blanket, perfect for any sort of patchwork pattern you want to apply it to. You can carry this over into your own projects or your own designs. Then into that corner, I'm going to work 2 double crochet, then chain 2, then another 2 double crochet. So this is the process that you're going to be repeating all the way around. You're going to double crochet into every stitch and then do the stitch cluster of 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into each corner. I will meet you back at the beginning. Now I am finishing the last 2 double crochet in the stitch cluster that goes into this corner, finishing that second double crochet, and then I'm going to work my final 4 double crochet of the square. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I'm going to just slip stitch into the top of that initial chain 2, into that second chain, and then cut a small length of yarn and fasten off. And now we have finished our star square. Again, pretty easy to make once you get the hang of it. There's just a few complicated stitches and a few things that could trip you up in the process, but this is how we make our star square. Let's learn how to make the snowflake square as well. So with color 1, again, we are going to make a slip knot. Whatever way you know how to make a slip knot, just do that. If I'm not doing it the exact same way as you, that is totally fine. So we've made our slip knot, and now we are going to chain 3 to start this one. Then we are going to slip stitch into that first chain, and then we are going to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we'll be working into the center of this little circle that we've made. It's a little harder to see since we only did 3, but we'll still be working in there. So I'm just going to work my first double crochet in there, and then I'm going to chain 2, then I'm going to work another double crochet in there, and then I'm going to chain 2. So essentially we are making 8 of these double crochet chain 2 stitches, So our chain 4 counts as that initial one. Since we made 4 chains, the first 2 count as that double crochet, then the second 2 chains obviously count as the second chain 2. So then we double crochet chain 2, we have double crochet chain 2, then we are going to make our 4th double crochet and then a chain 2, another double crochet and a chain 2. Of course, I'm working over my ends as I go, just so I have less to weave in later. Just made our 5th one. Is that our 5th one? No, that's our 6th one, sorry. I'm going to double crochet again, chain 2, I'm going to make my last double crochet. Oh, it's a bit finicky. Then chain 2. So we have made a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 double crochet and chain 2. I'm gonna lay that down, snip my remaining end, and get that out of the way. Then I'm going to slip stitch into the second chain of this initial chain 4. So I'm going to identify chain 1, then that second chain I'm going to insert my hook and slip stitch. So this is round 1 of our snowflake square. Then into this first chain 2 space, we are going to insert our hook, then just make a simple slip stitch. Then we are going to start off this round by chaining 2, which counts as our first double crochet. Then into that same chain 2 space, we are going to work 2 double crochet. Again, you aren't working into the chains themselves, just the space created by chaining 2 in the last round. Then I'm going to chain 3 and identify the next chain 2 space and then work 3 double crochet into that space. And 3. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, identify the next chain 2 space, and then work another 3 double crochet. Then chain 3 again, work another 3 double crochet. You can see the pattern that we're making here. We are going to work 3 double crochet into the chain 2 spaces and then chain 3 after we've worked them. So I'm going to work my next 3 double crochet into the chain 2 space and then chain 3. Coming up on my final ones here, 3 double crochet. If you're not going as fast as me, that is totally fine. Again, I've had a lot of practice making these, so feel free to slow or pause down the video if you need to. This is my job, so I get pretty fast at it sometimes. Then into that last chain 2 space, I'm going to place 3 double crochet. Then I'm going to chain 3 and then slip stitch into that initial chain 2. So the second chain right here of that initial chain 2. So now we have completed round 2. Then to start round 3, we are going to slip stitch into the top of these double crochet. So I'm going to slip stitch into the first one, then slip stitch into the second one over here. And then I'm going to chain 3. And then into this chain 3 space, I'm going to just slip stitch. I'm going to chain 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then into that same chain 3 space, going to slip stitch again. I'm going to chain 7, 2, 3, oh, I have a hair over here, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to sort of bend that in half and slip stitch into that again, then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch into the chain 3 space again, and then finally chain 3 and slip stitch into the first double crochet of that next cluster. So we've basically made our first little snowflake petal, if you want to call it, by doing a chain 3 slip stitch, chain 5 slip stitch, chain 7 slip stitch, chain 5 slip stitch, and a chain 3 slip stitch into that next double crochet. So you guessed it, we are going to slip stitch into these next 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, then chain 3 again, and slip stitch into our next chain 3 space, then chain 5, 4, 5, and then chain 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, slip stitch, and then chain 5 again, 5, slip stitch, and then chain 3. and slip stitch into the top of that double crochet that we've come to, and then slip stitch into the next 2 double crochet. So I think you've got the hang of this now, but I will work one more with you. So we will chain 3, slip stitch into our next chain 3 space, then chain 5, slip stitch again, then chain 7, then make another slip stitch, and then chain 5, make another slip stitch, then chain 3, and slip stitch into that first double crochet. So work this pattern all the way around. This chain 3 slip stitch, chain 5 slip stitch, chain 7 slip stitch, chain 5 slip stitch, chain 3 slip stitch, and I will meet you back basically at the beginning, a few stitches before the beginning. So now I'm coming up on my final chain 3 space. I've just slip stitched into the final 2 double crochet, then I'm going to chain 3, slip stitch, then chain 5, slip stitch again into the chain 3 space, then chain 7, 5, 6, 7, fold it in half sort of with my thumb as I go to slip stitch, then chain 5, slip stitch, then finally chain 3. Then we are going to slip stitch into that initial slip stitch that we made into this chain 2. So just work your hook in there. This is where mine is going in. I'm going to just slip stitch and then cut a length of yarn and fasten off. And that is our snowflake. That is 3 rounds of work. It's okay if it doesn't lay exactly flat when you're working it. Once you lay it out nice on a surface like this, you can see that it all sort of evens out and looks very pretty. So let's start working with our next color. So with this second color, we are going to make a slip knot. Then insert our hook into that slip knot. And then identify the first chain 5 of one of these clusters. So this is just what I'm going with. I'm going to identify this first chain 5. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that. So again, I'm not going into a particular chain, just going into the sort of chain 5 space, you could call it. I'm going to slip stitch, then I'm going to chain 1 after I've secured the yarn to this with a slip stitch. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet into that same stitch. Then I'm going to chain 1 again, and into the top of that chain 7, I'm going to single crochet, and then I'm going to chain again into the top of this chain 5. I am going to single crochet. Again, I'm working sort of into the space. I'm not working into the chain itself. And then to get over to that next cluster, I'm going to chain 2. We are not working into these chain 3s at all. We're just sort of letting them be down there. So I just chain 2, and then into that first chain 5, I'm going to work another single crochet, and chain 1, another single crochet into the top of the chain 7, chain 1, then my final single crochet into the top of this chain 5. I'm going to chain 2, ignoring these chain 3s again, and then into that first chain 5, I'm going to, you guessed it, single crochet, and chain 1, single crochet into the next, and chain 1, single crochet into the next, then chain 2. So you're going to sort of work this pattern, making a single crochet into the top of your chain 5, first chain 5, then chain 1, single crochet into the top of your chain 7, chain 1, then single crochet into the top of your chain 5, and chain 2 to get to the next sort of stitch cluster. So I'm going to work this all the way around, then I'll join you back at the beginning. So I am working my final chain 1 and single crochet into my final chain 5, then I'll work my final chain 2 of this round and identify that first single crochet. So you're not working into the slip stitch nor the first chain, but into the top of that first single crochet. And then I'm going to pull my end over here because I'm going to work over it in the next round and slip stitch into the top of that single crochet. So this was your round 4. To start, we are going to chain 1 and single crochet into that same stitch. Then into our next chain 1 sort of space, we are going to work another single crochet. Then into the top of that single crochet, we are going to work a single crochet, then a single into the chain 1, then a single into the top of that single crochet from the last round, and then 2 single crochet into this 2 chain space. So So 1 and 2 single crochet, then a single crochet into our next single crochet. I'm getting sick of saying single crochet. Then a single into the next chain 1 space, then a single into our next single, then a single into the next chain 1 space, then another single in that final one, and then 2 single crochets into this chain 2 space. So again, you're probably getting the hang of this pretty quickly, working a single crochet into the top of that single crochet, another single into the chain 1 space, another single into the top of the next single, another single into the chain 1 space, and another single into the top of the next single, finishing off with 2 single crochet into the chain 2 space. So I'm going to work this stitch pattern all the way around, and again, I'll meet you back at the beginning. So I've come back around to our final chain 2. I'm going to work 2 single crochet into that space, then identify our first single crochet of the round and slip stitch into the top of that to finish round 5. We are almost done, guys. To start round 6, our final round, I'm going to chain 2, and then into the next 2 stitches, I'm going to complete half double crochet. So my first half double crochet, then my second half double. Then to the next 8 stitches, I'm going to complete a single crochet. Lots of single crochets in this pattern, you can see. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th single crochet. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8th. So I've completed 2 half double crochet and 8 double crochet. So I'm going to do another 2 half double crochet to the next 2 stitches. Then into the next stitch, I'm going to work 2 double crochet into that same stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then into the next stitch, I'm going to work another 2 double crochet. So we're not making our corners like we did on the square, where we're working into the same stitch for these 2 double crochet clusters. We're doing the 2 double crochet into 2 separate stitches. So then I'm going to work 2 half double crochet again, and then work 8 single crochet again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then another 2 half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, then 2 double crochet into the next stitch, then chain 2 and another 2 double crochet into the next stitch. Then, as you guessed it, we are going to do 2 more half double crochet, then another 8 single crochet, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just gonna double check here that I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then another 2 half double crochet, then 2 double crochet into the same stitch, then chain 2 and 2 double crochet into the same stitch. Then I'm going to complete our last side by doing half double crochet, another half double crochet, then our final round of 8 double crochet and 8. Then you'll see we have 3 stitches left, so I'm going to work 2 half double crochet into 2 of those stitches, and then into this last stitch I'm going to work 2 double crochet, then chain 2, and then into that same stitch, since we have our final double crochet represented with that initial chain 2, so into the same stitch we are going to work another double crochet. And then, since this was our final double crochet, we are going to slip stitch into the top of it, and then cut your yarn and fasten off. But this is our snowflake square. Again, probably a lot easier than you thought it was. This one especially looks more complicated than it actually is. So you are going to make 32 of these snowflake squares and 32 of your star squares. It's a lot easier than it seems. It might take you a month or 2 to do if you're a slow worker, but if you're someone like me who loves to grind these out while you're watching a movie or TV or something, it will absolutely fly by and you'll be done in the blink of an eye. Again, make 32 of the snowflake square, make 32 of the star square, and I will meet you back where we are getting ready to attach these 2 squares together. So let's say I'm starting on my first 2 squares, so I want to stitch these 2 squares together on this side. And so to do that, I'm going to grab my white yarn, find my end, and on this side, you can really start on this corner as well, but I just like to do it with this orientation. You're going to find the second chain of that corner, the chain 2 that you created to make that corner. You're going to insert your hook into that second chain. So this is what it looks like on the hook. And then I'm going to take my yarn and pull it through, just pull it through totally. And then I'm going to create a little knot. This will secure my yarn to this side of the square. Then after I've done that, I'm gonna reinsert my hook into that chain. I'm going to pull up a loop. And again, I like to kind of crochet over my ends as I go. So I'm gonna fold this over to work as I go, but if you don't like doing that, if you like it to secure it a different way, that's totally fine. So I'm going to do that. I've pulled up a loop and now I'm going to chain 2. And this is where it becomes the join as you go method. So we're going to be creating a line in between these 2 squares right here, right? So after we've done this chain 2, we're going to remove our hook and then find the corresponding stitch on the other side. So this will be the chain 1, the first chain of that chain 2 on this corner, on the top right corner of the star. And so we're going to insert our hook into that stitch. So I'm inserting my hook into this first stitch of the chain 2. I'm gonna do it from front to back though, I almost messed up there. So instead of going through the back to front like I did to get this yarn secured, I'm going to do it from front to back. It can be a little hard to work that, but here we go. So I've worked that from back to front. And when I do that, I'm going to reinsert my hook into the top of that chain 2. I'm going to pull that loop through the chain. This basically just connects these 2 squares. And so then I'm going to identify my next stitch on the snowflake square. So it's going to be that first double crochet after that chain. And I'm going to just normally work a double crochet into that stitch. This might take a little finessing. I've used the join as you go method a lot, but it's super complicated, I feel, whenever you first figure it out to kind of work your wrists around. It's not like the natural form of crocheting. But I've just worked that double crochet, so I'm going to pull up my loop a little bit, make it a little bigger. Then I'm going to remove my hook. Then I'm going to identify the next corresponding stitch on this star. If you ever get confused on what the next corresponding stitch is, just lay your work out flat, look at it, and then identify that next stitch. So I'm going to again insert my hook from front to back on that stitch, pull the loop through, connected my second double crochet to that side. So you can kind of see the rhythm that we're going to get going here. I'm going to again identify the next stitch on my snowflake square, then I'm going to double crochet into that next stitch, make a little bit of a big loop, find my next stitch on my star, insert from front to back, pull that loop through, and I've connected that third double crochet. Let's find that 4th stitch that we're working into, insert our hook, make a double crochet. You can see how I'm working over that end as I go too, so I don't have to weave that in later. That's my favorite part of any of these patterns. Then find the corresponding stitch on the star square, pull that loop through. Now we've connected 4 double crochet. I'll work the rest of this row with you in real time, especially since I can imagine join as you go is new to a lot of people watching this tutorial. So I'm going to work that next stitch into my next stitch on the snowflake square, remove my hook while I pull up the loop a little bit, identify the next stitch. Oh, this is maybe a good example of what can happen sometimes. I just totally pulled a little bit too much. That's why we pull up the loop when we do our double crochet, is so whenever we go to pull the loop through, we don't accidentally just, totally undo the stitch, almost did it again there. So I'm gonna pull that through, do my next double crochet in the snowflake, open up my loop a little bit. Maybe hold on to it while you're doing that so you don't mess up like me. Work it from front to back, pull the loop through, kind of just like you're almost slip stitching it to this side. I'm gonna work another double crochet, insert my hook, pull that through, work another double crochet, insert my hook, pull the loop through, next double crochet, pull up the loop, pull the loop through, another double crochet, pull up the loop, insert my hook, pull the loop through, yet another double crochet. We're getting to the end here. Insert my hook from front to back, pull the loop through, another double crochet, pull the loop, insert my hook. There we go. Coming up on these final stitches, you can see that I'm kind of getting into a rhythm with it. So we're coming up on our final stitch here. I'm going into the final double crochet on the snowflake now. I'm gonna pull up that loop, and that went into the final double crochet of the star. And so I'm going to be working my final double crochet into this, into the first chain of that chain 2 that created a corner. And I'm going to make my final double crochet, and I'm going to insert my hook into the, I guess that's the second chain of the chain 2 of this corner. I'm going to pull that loop through. This one's a bit hard. And I have fully connected these with join as you go. Now I'm going to tie off. I'm going to cut a little length and then pull that end through. And look how easy that was to connect these two squares. And doesn't it look pretty nice and clean? Okay, so now that you know how to attach two squares together, we are going to go over what rows we will be arranging these into. So you've already attached the star square and the snowflake square together, so we're just going to repeat this pattern 4 times for a total of 8 squares in the row. So star, snowflake, star, snowflake, star, snowflake, and star, snowflake. So that is a total of 8 squares, starting with the star and ending with the snowflake, just doing that in a long row, doing the join as you go on the sides of those squares. So that is going to be our row 1, and then for row 2, we are going to do basically the same thing, but we are going to start with the snowflake instead. So I'll just go over this again. You're going to start with the snowflake and then the star, and then this repeat of 2 you're going to do 4 times for a total of 8 squares. So snowflake, star, snowflake, star, snowflake, star, snowflake, star. So these are the 2 kinds of rows we're going to be making for this pattern, and you are going to be making 4 of the kind that starts with a star, so row 1, and you're going to be making 4 of the kind that starts with the snowflake, so 4 of row 2 for a total of 8 rows with 8 squares in them each. So now I'm going to show you, whenever you have these rows completed, how you're going to attach them together with a join as you go. It's basically the exact same method as what you already know from attaching just 2 squares together. But let's look at how we work stitches into the sides of the join as you go rows and everything like that. So I'm going to start with my rows aligned, and I'm going to work from right to left as per usual. And just again, make sure that your stars are always aligned the right way. So I'm going to go into the top right of this square. I'm going to go into the second chain of this chain 2 space, or this chain 2 corner, and I'm going to attach my yarn. I'm going to reinsert my hook. Again, I usually crochet over my ends. You don't have to if you want to secure them in a different way, but this is what I do to save some time. I'm going to pull up a loop and then chain 2. I'm going to make my loop really big. Then I'm going to identify the corresponding stitch on the other side. So it's going to be the bottom right corner of the snowflake square. It's going to be the first chain of this corner, of this chain 2 corner. So I'm going to insert my hook from front to back on this corner into that chain, just like that. And I'm going to find that big loop again, insert my hook, size the loop down just a little bit, and then I am going to pull that loop through. So we have attached these 2 at their corners. Then I'm going to do basically the same thing that we did for the other stitches where we were attaching the 2 squares together, but this time we'll have some different ends to deal with, and we will be crocheting into the sides of the join as you go rows. So I'm going to show you guys how I deal with those as I attach my long rows together. I will meet you guys whenever I have finished attaching these 2 squares a little bit. I'll meet you probably about right here. Okay, so we are coming up again on the last few stitches of these 2 squares. So I'm just going to continue to work, get that end of the way. Continue to work as normal, doing the join as you go. And then you can see we're coming up on this end of the snowflake here. And so what I'm going to do, so the stitch before, whenever I'm going into this stitch has the slip stitch on top where you finish the row off, and also the stitch that you went into, the chain 2 that you slip stitched into to create that finishing slip stitch. So I am going to go into that slip stitch, insert my hook there, and I'm going to place the end in between my working yarn and this loop, and then I'm going to keep it there while I do my normal join as you go. So put the loop over my hook, pull it through that slip stitch, I'm gonna tug the end a little bit, and I'm going to put the end down to my star square, and then continue to crochet over it like you would any other end. So that might create a little bit of a gap in the double crochets in between where you slip stitched into there, but it's really not noticeable whenever we finish and block the blanket, so it's not something to worry about if you are noticing that. So I'm running into an issue here that you might have had while you were joining some squares, where I think I messed up one of these rows, and so I have an extra chain here that I don't have over here, but that's totally fine. I'm just going to crochet into that chain again, and even though there's no corresponding stitch on this other side, since I already slip stitched into the chain that was over here, I'm going to go back into that chain, insert my hook, pull that loop through, and just pull through as per usual. So both of these double crochets are going into the final chain of the snowflake square, but that is totally fine. It prevents you from having to go back and figure out where you messed up in these squares, and it does not affect the final look really at all. So now I'm going to show you how to work into the side of these join as you go rows. So this is the side of a chain 2 that started a row. So I will just show you where I'm going to insert my hook. I'm just going to go into the bottom of this. It's basically the first chain. I have these sort of 2 loops on this side, and I have 1 on this side. I'm going to remove my hook, then I'm going to work a double crochet into that space, then pull up my loop, and then on this side we're working into the side of an actual double crochet. So just sort of into the post of that double crochet, it would be this one over here, just sort of that kind of line on the left of the stitch. I'm going to insert my hook. It's only sort of 1 loop, but you can see the whole stitch at the back. I'm going to insert my hook into the loop and then pull it through just there. And then we're going to do that same thing again, but I'm going to work into the top of the stitch here. I'm not going to work into sort of the top of the next chain. I'm going to work into the loop that was created whenever we slip stitched into the side of the square. So I'm going to put my hook back in the loop and work into that small space, and then up here I'm going to insert my hook again into the top of this double crochet, not really into the stitch itself. I'm just going to have this sort of top loop. It's sort of that diagonal part of the double crochet stitch, and then I'm going to pull my loop small again after I insert my hook, and then pull that through. So that's how I work into the sides of these join as you go rows, and then I'm going to continue to work as normal into these next few stitches. I'll just do those with you guys. So I'm going to go into this next stitch. We are not, by the way, working into the chains that we already did for the join as you go rows. So the chains that are connected, the blue chains that are connected to these chain 2s, we are not working into those. So I'm going to go into the free chain of that chain 2 corner, make my double crochet, and I am going to treat this end the same way that I did the one for the snowflake square. So I'm going to put it in between my working yarn and my loop, and then I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to insert my hook into the corresponding stitch on the other side and keep that end in between while I do my normal join as you go. Pull that through, and then I keep that in there, and then I crochet over it as I go after I have sort of pulled it down to the bottom row. And I'm going to just continue doing this all the way down to the row. I'll meet you guys for the last few stitches on the other side and show you what it looks like whenever we have 2 rows basically crocheted all the way together. You might notice a bit of messy stitches around the corners or the junctions, but again, that is totally fine. Whenever we block it, it's going to really smooth it out and make it nice and flat. So we are now coming up on the end of the row. So I'm going to work the last few stitches with you guys. I just have 1 left on my second to last square. always a struggle to get into the second chain of the squares over here. There we go. And then I'm going to work as normal. I'm going to work into the side of this chain 2, pull up, go into the post sort of this. That's not what the actual technical term for it is, but that's just what I call it because that's sort of what it looks like. If you're ever doing front post double crochet, you'll discover that that's not what a double crochet post is, but for the purposes of this pattern, that's what I'm going to call it. And we are going to start working our final 2 squares together. Very exciting. Pull this through. I'm going to do the same thing with my end as I have been doing with the whole row, putting it in between my working yarn and my loop. Again, this is not a requirement. You don't have to do that. You can weave in your ends normally. I just like to save as much time as possible, so that is what I do. Alright, so we are coming up on the final stitches of this join as you go row, stitching these long squares together. This whole process takes me about half an hour to 45 minutes per row, but if it takes you longer, that is more than reasonable. This is sort of a difficult thing to do, but it does save a lot of time in the long run, if you can believe it. That's sort of the whole point of join as you go rows. You can see I just did the same thing for weaving in this end as I have been doing for this whole row, putting that end in between the working yarn and the big loop before I continue working my double crochets. So now we are coming up on the final few stitches. Once again, going to slip stitch to the corresponding stitch on the other side, as I have been doing, and I'm going to work into that final chain. Pretty exciting. Oh, almost missed that and undid my stitch there. I do that pretty often. So now we have slip stitched our final 2 together in these join as you go rows. So I'm going to cut this yarn, fasten off as we have been doing. So this is how you stitched your row 1 and your row 2 together. You'll notice that I started the section having a row 1 on top and a row 2 on the bottom, but now I have a row 2 on the top and a row 1 on the bottom, which whenever filming, I didn't realize that I had done that. But this is what you're going to be doing now that you have your 8 rows. You're going to be alternating rows 1 and 2 as you sew them together. So I will be putting a row that starts with a snowflake square down here, and I'll be following it with another row that starts with a star square after that. And I will just be using the same join as you go technique that I just showed you. So I will meet you back once we have all of our 8 rows sewn together with that alternating pattern. Okay, so we've gotten to the point where I have sewn all the different rows together. You can see that I alternated the squares and the different rows as I went along. So let's move on to the final part of the blanket. You can start this part on any side that you want to, but I'm just going to start it on the corner here so I can show you guys the slightly more complicated parts of this, but we're basically just going to add a quick little border to the outside and then we will be done. So I'm just going to attach my yarn by pulling it through a stitch, as we've been doing, tying it off. I'm going to put the hook back through that stitch, pull up a loop, and chain 1. And so what we're going to do to start our border is slip stitch around the entire thing, which may seem tedious, but it's going to create a very nice and clean edge for us. So I'm going to start that by slip stitching into the next stitch, then slip stitching into the next, and you'll get the idea of what we're doing here. Slip stitching into that next chain. Then whenever we get to the join as you go rows, we're going to create 2 slip stitches as we've been doing, working into the stitches exactly as you have been doing whenever you were doing the join as you go. So I just created 2 slip stitches into the side of that row. I'm going into the chain on the next square. I'm going to continue to slip stitch until I reach the corner. You want to be doing a pretty loose slip stitch, especially if you're a beginner. You can have the impulse to pull your yarn pretty tight while you're doing this, but for our next round we'll be working into these slip stitches, so you don't want to make the yarn too tight and to the point where you can't work into it at all. So now I'm coming up on this corner and I'm going to slip stitch into this last stitch, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the chain space. I'm not going to slip stitch into these chains, I'm just going to do one slip stitch, then I'm going to chain 2 to create my corner. I'm going to rotate my work, and then I'm going to slip stitch back into that chain space, and then I'm just going to repeat this process all the way around until we come back to our original slip stitches. Alright, so we have come all the way back around, making our slip stitches into every single stitch on the side of our blanket. And so we have come back to this original place where we created the first chain. So this is the first chain, and this was our first slip stitch. So you can see there's no slip stitch actually in this one. So I'm going to create a slip stitch into it. And then to start our next round, I'm going to chain 1. And then for this, we will be working into the back loops only of our slip stitches. So we're not going to be going into both of them. We're just going to be going into this one. So I'm going to yarn over, put it just in the back loop so you can see that I'm not going in there, and then I'm going to work a double crochet. And then we are going to work a double crochet in the back loop of each stitch all the way around. So we'll continue to create double crochets into every single stitch. So we are coming up on our corner now, that chain 2 that we made in every single corner on the blanket. So all 4 corners. So I'm going to create another double crochet, and then into this chain 2 space I'm going to work just 1 double crochet, and then I'm going to rotate my work and then chain 2, then work another double crochet into the same space. So we have just 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet into the chain 2 space, and then into the next slip stitch I'm going to work to the back loop only, continue to work those double crochets. So I will meet you back after we have worked all of these double crochets into the back loop only of our slip stitches. Alright, we have come back around to our last few stitches on this. So I'm going to continue to work my last few double crochet in the back loop only, and this is the last slip stitch that we made back into that original stitch. So I'm going to work into there, and then I'm going to identify the top of my first double crochet, skipping that chain 1, and then slip stitch into that, and we've finished our first row, and now we only have 1 more row to go. Yay! Then we are all done. We're basically going to do the exact same thing that we just did. I'm going to chain 2 to start, and then I'm going to have that count as my first double crochet, so that counts as the corresponding stitch for this one. So I'm going to start working into this stitch, make my first double crochet. Nope, it can kind of be hard sometimes, and just keep on going. I'll show you guys the corner as well, and then whenever we get to that corner we are going to do 2 double crochet, not just 1, into the corner. So 2 double crochet into that chain 2 space, 1 and 2, and then after that we are going to turn our work and then create another chain 2 space. We'll never be working into that since this is our last corner. But then after that chain 2, we will continue to work into this chain 2 space by placing 2 double crochet. So we just worked 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into that chain 2 space. And finally, we will just keep on placing a double crochet into every stitch around and working that little stitch cluster into every corner. All right, we are coming up on the last few stitches of the entire project, which is super exciting. Just gonna complete them with you guys. Come back to our initial chain 2 that counts as our first double crochet. So we are going to slip stitch into the second chain of that double crochet, and then we are going to fasten off as per usual, and we are all done. Isn't that so exciting? I am going to wash and block my project, which just consists of getting it all soaking wet and then not wringing it out, but I roll it up in towels to get the water out, and then I lay it out super flat to dry with books or something to weigh down the edges. And yeah, I've already woven in all my ends, but if you haven't, go ahead and do that. I'm gonna have a few to weave in here, as you can see, so I'm probably gonna do that before I block, but congratulations on finishing this project!